Hey guys, Phone Freak here. So, one of the things I'm passionate about is making sure that this maker hobby, electronics fixing hobby, learning about STEM and electronics is as accessible as possible. That means that, we can afford, especially as beginners, afford some of the items that we need to learn these things and to do these things. It's wonderful to see so many amazing content creators out there. They've been around for a long time. They're, professionals who have been kind enough to lend their knowledge via YouTube. But the thing is that when you see a dude pick up a $500 meter to test a battery, or use a $5,000 scope to show you a waveform or whatever, it can just seem a little bit out of reach. And that's actually not the case. So first of all, when we're just getting started, the idea of good enough is good enough. And there is some great gear out there, especially for beginners, that can really get the job done. Especially when you're just, if your idea is to learn. So for starters, I'm going to show you this voltmeter, because I bought this on a LARF. I needed a voltmeter. I have had this WaveTech for many years. It was a gift in 20 years or so. It's 27XT. But I needed a meter. I picked this up. Now, I had to go into my Amazon account. I picked it up in June 22. It's a Kywe HT118A. And it does everything. But the first thing I love about it, especially for beginners, is when you turn it on, it lights up the ports that you need to plug in depending on which function you're picked. Pretty cool. Let's go over to amps, because I know amps will light up differently. See that? It has the usual, volts AC, and DC, millivolts AC, DC. It does, of course, it has an ohm meter and the diode, short circuit test function. It does have a counter. You can see it'll count in hertz. I don't know the bandwidth because I've never really needed to use it for that. And ammeter up to 10 volts. And it has a flashlight, or 10 amps, sorry. It has a flashlight, which is nice. And then another item that I was kind of pleased with, and that's the non-contact volt thing. So that it'll tell you that you're near a live wire. And if you get close enough, it switches from L to H. See that? Depending on, I guess, how close you are to the hot. Or to whatever voltage. But that's actually really handy. Both the flashlight and the NCV on this were handy when I was under my desk trying to trace something. So, $49 on Amazon Canada, and then right now it's Cyber Monday, so like $33 is what the sale was when I checked my account. I was like, whoa, cool. But that's not the only thing about this meter. A real surprise. I went to WaveTech because I was looking for, just to see what the replacement was for the meter that I've had for 20 years. Imagine my shock when I see this and the price. Yeah, that's the same. Right? Yeah, I'd say that's a rebrand. Also, the box is identical. I was thinking, okay, what if the Kywe's is a ripoff? But it's not, because the box is identical. So yeah, that was a surprise. And frankly, there are quite a few companies like this that make pretty good gear. I bought a second meter from them. I think it's in the truck or something, but it's a DC clamp ammeter. There's lots of gear out there for low dollars. As you can see, $50, $33 voltmeter is functional. If you're in Canada, Canadian Tire actually has a half decently, I think about $45 or $50 multimeter. You don't have to have a fluke. When you're getting started, you just want to learn about waveforms, or maybe you're troubleshooting an old Commodore 64 and you just need to see the clocking signals. Believe it or not, I came across a YouTube where a young lady who, we're talking maybe 20 years old or something, I think still a student, was troubleshooting a Commodore and she needed a scope. She bought one of these. I've had this little scope forever, because they run, you find them on AliExpress, and they are useful enough. Let's have a look. It's 0 to 200 kilohertz. So you're not talking like heavy bandwidth, but if you're just looking at if you want to learn a little bit of waveforms or whatever, this is perfect. There's also similar function generators, like a board with 3 knobs on it and a little clicker to give you a square wave or saw wave or whatever. But it works. You run it off a 9-volt battery, off you go. It would get the job done, and she actually troubleshot an entire Commodore 64 with this thing. It was really incredible. Another item, actually quite useful, is one of these. I had to hit up I had to go and look at, actually just look at AliExpress, because these are anywhere from $13 to $20 depending. In several states you can get them as a kit, you can get them pre-built, you can get them like this with no case, but pre-assembled. I put that one in a case temporarily. Same thing with these, anywhere from, you know, $10 to $30 Canadian, depending on how they're done, and it works. It's a component tester. So yeah, little component tester, test caps, resistors, transistors, which is amazing. And yeah, that's about right, because that's 1 microfarad capacitor, I think. And you know, give you ESR and all that stuff, and it actually does work. Some of the kits come with a little 3 little leads with a little, you know, those little tiny like hooked ends that like a scope or something would have, little probe leads, so you don't have to use this little stupid thing. But yeah, low doors, and it's a functional thing, which is handy because, you know, if you're given some parts, or if you get like I did in a Hamfest, you know, a box of miscellaneous capacitors, you know, go bad with age, and you might want to quickly check. For example, like I have a bunch of these. Well, you know they're old because they say made in Canada. If you can see that, yeah, it's a 200 VDC 0.47K. This would be probably a paper cap on the inside, but it's ceramic on the outside with epoxy seal. But I have a bunch of these, and it's nice to test to make sure they're okay before I use them. Generally, I just buy new caps, but you know, if you're testing something, or you know, whatever, that little unit, it works like a charm. And so that's kind of my point. My point is that stuff doesn't have to be multi thousands of dollars. A great beginner scope, which when I say beginner, I mean it, is this guy, and they're for pretty low money, hundreds something. You can see there's lots of reviews online about these, and you know, depending on the reviewer's experience and ability to test, you get mixed reviews. I think it's okay for a beginner, but I wouldn't call it a 100 megahertz scope. It's a 50 meg scope, really. It does have a signal generator on it. But it does work, and it gives you what you need to know. It gives you your waveform, gives you the voltage peak to peak, frequency, and things like that. I have used it for lots of things. And of course, higher bandwidth than this, which is handy. There's so many options out there for low dollar equipment. And you know, if you want to get in on how one of these works or whatever, I can definitely do a video showing you the, you know, how this thing works. I also somewhere have a little function generator on a board that came with a bunch of ham radio gear I was given. And if I can dig that out, I'll show that to you too. We're in almost a golden age for low dollar stuff coming from China, and sometimes it's actually pretty good stuff, especially when you're just getting started. So I hope this little thing was just helpful, because I know the feeling that some of this stuff was so out of reach was what really bothered me when I was thinking about doing more advanced things and needing things like an oscilloscope and other things. And it's just simply not the case. There are so many options. Used equipment, Hamfests, I get things from auctions. This wonderful bench meter, I think it was at $20 or $30, works like a charm. Same thing for this counter. Now I have the ability to test calibration, and because this is only 100 megahertz up, which is fine for me, this counter was a winner. Same thing, I see a bunch of these power supplies that come up at auction, like $30 for a cheap, high quality, low amperage, mind you, bench supply, which is currently powering my OCXO until I build a power supply for it. Of course, the caveat being with used test equipment from like an auction or something, you don't know what you're necessarily getting. Most of those places are good with their descriptions, you know, but they pretty much flip it on, make sure it works, and that's about it. So that's one of the unknowns. But things like Hamfests, or if you're in a larger city, if you've got a university that does surplus sales and things like that, you can get some deals. They're out there, definitely. This stuff can be accessible.